what fascinates me is you see the title, World's Greatest Dad, and you think, wacky Disney family comedy, and then you see Robin Williams headlining the cast, you directing, and you come in with a certain expectation. And I was wondering, are you cognizant of that, setting these expectations up and then defying them?
No, I mean, I was being really snarky when I called it World's Greatest Dad because of the events that happen in it. Mm-hmm. But with that said, I really, really hope that there's like a family of Mormons that, go and get totally freaked out. I also like that, like, it's not a lot of guesswork. Like 5 minutes in, there'll be a kid beating off with a belt. So it's not like, it won't be like, we were into the movie for half an hour and we were so disturbed,
Yeah.
So, I will be happy if that happens.
But I'm curious where the seeds of this idea came from for you.
It was, the idea didn't really, the events that happened in the movie didn't strike me as much as the end of the movie did, and it is weird to, I was listening to Albert Brooks talk, and he was saying that the end of Lost in America came to him before the rest of the movie, and I was like, wow, that's really weird, because but that is how this movie came up, the speech Robin gives at the end. I wasn't even sure who his son would be or what his son would be like, but I just thought it'd be funny if that was the speech he gave.
Okay. And did you write this with Robin in mind?
No, I really, because, he plays a poetry teacher in this movie, so if I was writing a movie for Robin, I think he tackled that pretty well already. I wouldn't have made him a
But it's
poetry
a great parody of that in some ways.
It is true. It is true. It is a parody, but I'm also glad that I got rid of the scene where he comes to school every day in an egg. But no, yeah, it is really it is kind of the opposite of
Dead Poet Society.
Dead Poets, of course, sure.
What strikes us both about this is obviously Robin Williams is one of our great actors, but he's really fantastic in this. And I was curious how you direct him.
Thanks. Yeah, he really is. And so, like, even like a couple scenes in, watching him act, I'm like going, oh man, it's like suddenly I realized, it was a huge, I was like, wow, he really is an amazing actor. You already said that, So I did, I'll tell you, the night before we started filming, because I've known him for 25 years, and I'm like going, is he going to listen to me? You know what I mean? I really imagined him going, that's great, but that is one way we could do it, but I have an Academy Award, and you were in Hot to Trot, so we're going to do it my way.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So, but it was the direct opposite. Robin and I would collaborate all the time, all day long, about who Lance is and what he would do and what he wouldn't do, which I think is Robin said that is the safest he's ever felt making a movie.
Wow. Okay.
Well, because my goal wasn't to like have him go crazy and then cut a performance into it. He was involved in the whole process of everything. It was really fun. Like even like, discussing things like as much as like his socks, and he wasn't like going, why are we concerned about my socks? I'm like, well, the ankles are the gateway into a man's soul. He would just be like going, all right, yeah, he should have socks like that. So it was pretty funny.
So that's good though that you mentioned that you just didn't want him to go crazy, because I think like after Mork and Mindy, everyone expected all of his movies to be like basically Mork, and that's why people, I guess, were caught off guard by The World According to Garp, which I thought he was really good in, but people just wanted him to be Mork all the time. And I think it's great that you're giving him this really this range outside of everything that he's done before.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's just been it's been really cool. Making the movie was really cool, and now the fact that to hear you guys say that you liked it, it really does mean a lot to me. I'm not that jaded. I've been in comedy jail for about 20 years, so I'm really excited to see a lot of it. Your kind words of it. You're the file in the cake. Getting me out of comedy jail. So
we can do to help.
We appreciate this movie so much. But I want to talk to you about moving from comedy to film in just a second. But you mentioned that Robin Williams felt very safe on this set and on this film. And this is not a film that was made with a safety net. It doesn't seem to be. So I'm curious, when you're dealing with a film this kind of delicate and tricky with the themes, what tone were you looking for, and when did you know that it was working?
Yeah. Well, the tone that I was working for is, we just constantly go back to, even though there's like characters that are, to me, kind of one-dimensional and kind of cartoony, the students and some of the other characters, I'm kind of, and it sounds really pretentious, but I'm kind of always thinking of like Preston Sturges movies where there would be these like kind of, outrageous characters, and that they were kind of, but everything else, especially the leads, lots of times were playing things fairly straight,
Right.
And that was kind of what we were going for. And there was these moments where, and it's not even these moments where like, I think he's really amazing on the talk show. When he's on the talk show and he gives this performance where, I don't know what he's doing. And, he said later on, he goes, it's pretty cool. I think I just had a breakdown. And I was like, well, that's really good. Can you do it again? And we just wiped his tears off and we did it again. But it's really tiny moments when I watched him act that I was like going, oh, this is a real person, It was little stuff with his son, with Daryl. He and Daryl would just kind of, they would get into this thing where they really were those two people, where they were just always kind of winning, just saying shitty little things. Oh, sorry, but
you can fine.
Say whatever you want.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, but so they were always just, that's when I was like, oh, this might work, because they did seem like a real father and son sometimes.
Yeah, and Jerry and I were talking before you came on the line. One of the themes of the film that impressed us a lot was there's a lot of glorifying of the dead in this movie, and it seems like, especially in the past couple of months, our culture has been witnessing a lot of that. And I'm wondering, was that something you wanted to express particularly? It must have been.
Yeah, I mean, the way people reinvent, or even like glom on the tragedies, it's like the disservice so many people did at 9/11, making it about them instead of people who really did lose people, which,
right.
Was disgusting. And then, it's just, there's a little wink to the camera, because, that shot when he's in the porn stand and Robin starts crying, that's Chris from Nirvana.
Yeah.
And I said,
Chris Novoselic,
Yeah, and I said to him, I go, well, how when someone passes away, people reinvent them, and then in the meantime, they kind of ignore the people that actually did know the person, and then make it all about themselves instead about the people that cared about that person. I don't know if you can relate to that. And then Chris so Chris just smiled at me, and he's like, kind of like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. That's who that was. That's great. I think, it just seems like that part of the film, I mean, the whole thing is a scathing satire, but we whitewash these people, a lot of, like, bad people when they pass away.
When you look at, like, people's perception of Michael Jackson, it's like, I think because they're mourning the Michael Jackson from 85, and I was like, of course, I feel bad for his daughter, and she's not his daughter, the girl he bought with someone else's jizz, but when when she says, oh, my dad is so great, I'm like going, well, I'm sure he was really nice to you. You're a little girl, I wanted to hear what the son had to say, but they didn't let him near the microphone. he got like clotheslined by Tito Jackson before he could get to the mic.
Always a bad thing, or maybe a good thing.
Yeah, that kid was blinking out Morse code behind his sister like a Vietnamese prisoner of war trying to send a Morse code home. Like, don't make me go to Grandpa Joe's. So yeah, I mean, as a culture, we just really, we I don't know why we do that, and it's a very juvenile thing too. Like, if you see the people that are reinventing Michael Jackson, they're not fully developed adults. They're very infantile. It's a teenage thing. So I guess it makes sense that we did take, that it does take place in this movie in a school.
I'm afraid if someone like a horrible dictator or something died, they'd whitewash him too. They just say, oh, he was a great man.
Well, I mean, like how old are you guys?
I'm 38, and
okay. Well, you're old enough. I mean, like this whole idea of like the reinventing of Reagan. It's like, really? I remember
horrible.
Reagan was a guy who didn't acknowledge AIDS,
Yeah.
So now he's the, Jesus Christ, it's just, whatever. So history's not written history's written not by the winners, but by the smart enough friends of the winners.
Yeah,
that's a good
you're
point.
absolutely right.
The guys don't want to get beat up anymore.
in terms of your move into filmmaking, obviously there was Shakes the Clown, but
right.
between that and Sleeping Dogs Lie, your last film, what happened in you? Because you seem to be very motivated to become a truly independent filmmaker.
Well, I am. That doesn't motivate me. I really have no desire to make movies in the studio system because I don't really want to get notes from somebody about my brother, It's like these people are based on all people I know, so you can't tell me how they would do anything. But, I think, like, Shakes was a movie that I made, and it was, none of it was supposed to be taken serious. Two things. I wish another actor played Shakes because I really wrote it with John Goodman in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish the other thing was that at the AA meeting, I wish Shakes was I wish he was Irishing up his coffee. Like, I wish he was pouring booze in the coffee while he's speaking at an AA meeting, It's a day at a time, everyone, gulp, gulp, gulp. But I think maybe people might have understood it a little more or whatever. I don't go, oh, no one got my masterpiece, but I really, the Sleeping Dogs Lie and World's Greatest Dad was my attempt to see, hey, could I make a movie where people could actually identify with these characters, and they didn't have to. I guess I'm going for empathy. I'm not really going for sympathy, and so this is what excites me. This isn't like lots of times like. This is really what I'm happiest to be, making movies, and going to Sundance. I feel like a Starbelly Sneetch, and I finally found the other Starbelly Sneetches.
Yeah, watching your films, it's like, I mean, I hate to make comparisons, but it calls to mind a kind of compassionate Todd Solondz. Jerry and I were talking about Todd Solondz earlier.
Well, I think, like, what's funny is sometimes people will watch the movies I make and they're disappointed in the end because they'll say that they're cop-out because he gives a happy end, but I almost feel that it's almost more subversive to try to write a happy ending. Yeah. But I also think it's funny as if at the end of World's Greatest Dad, I said I had 5 minutes left and I said, I better make this commercial. I know people have seen Robin Williams' Hog and a kid died, but I better try to cue it up in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, but no, it was good the way. I thought the ending was perfect, and I mean, you're right. It is in this day and age. It is the subversive thing to go for the happy ending, or I guess the bittersweet maybe, or ending.
And it made perfect sense to that journey.
Well, thanks, and that's the thing. It's like when I'm making these screenplays and stuff. And it's not. And by the way, all the screenplays that I write, they don't all end that way. I'm finishing up a movie where it is kind of like, what have we become and who are we? Kind of an ending. But I just want to. I know every once in a while I sound like Dirk Diggler to me. I just want to keep making movies. I'm just going to keep rocking and rolling to keep people, But I am sincere. I really love making movies, and I just hope I can keep making them. And I don't want to make them on other people's terms, and I just want to work with people I respect and like.
We want to see everything you do, man. And
you really do.
Before we let you go, let me ask you about your upcoming projects. You talked about writing I believe, like a serial killer project and a Kinks musical. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's a spree killer movie, and that's the one I've been almost finished on. The problem is I finished it and it was 167 pages, so I'm trying to get it down to 120 pages. But and that's kind of an indictment on us. It's more about our culture than about the actual killers. And it wasn't about, I know that like Natural Born Killers is really a parody of the media, but I kind of just wanted a parody like who we've become as people. And then the other thing is the Kinks thing is Schoolboys in Disgrace, which is an album of the Kinks from the 70s, which I've loved the Kinks. So I met with Ray, and he kind of gave me the blessing to write a screenplay for it. So that's where it's at. It's not like there's a studio involved or any of this kind of stuff. But he was like, well, who do you think would, go to this movie? By the way, I was sweating like when I was talking to him. It was like the Chris Farley show, and And he goes, "Who's this movie for?" And I said, "Well, all the kids that fucking hate High School Musical." And then he goes, "Oh, okay." And he smiled. And so that's the two things that I'm working on. But I've got to wrap it up. I'm really sorry. It's been great talking to you.
Understand.
You too. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.